In our last episode, the kaiju attacks stopped when the rift between our world and theirs was closed by our heroes. Now it's 10 years later, and it's up to a new generation of Jaeger pilots to save us when the kaiju return. Meaningful continuation of the story, or a pointless cash grab on a sequel nobody expected? This is Pacific Rim Uprising. Alright, both Pacific Rim movies know exactly what they are. Big robots, big monsters, now fight. A simple formula, and Uprising takes the same formula and just cranks it up. By the way, it's been out for about a week, and I'll have a few light spoilers here and there. If you haven't seen the movie yet and you want to be totally surprised, you might want to sit this one out until you've seen the movie. Who's back? Well, not Guillermo del Toro. Directing is taken over by Stephen S. DeKnight, who mainly has TV projects under his belt. Raleigh, MIA, Pentecost, he died in the last movie, and Mako, played by Rinko Kikuchi, is here as a glorified cameo. That leaves Newt and Gottlieb as the only returning characters. They weren't the most fleshed out characters in the first, but they had a great chemistry together and they made a good team. The reveal that Newt has been tied to the kaiju hive mind ever since his drift in the first movie, I didn't see that coming. Sleeper agent, okay. Then he becomes a mustache-twirling villain. But it's still Charlie Day, so of course he's hilarious. John Boyega does bring some charm and heart to the movie. He's Pentecost's son and the last tie to the previous movie. You didn't miss it, Pentecost never mentioned him in the first movie. But it's the typical trying to impress daddy to make him proud, but he died before I could do so why bother with anything else storyline. And I thought it was interesting how they introduced this world 10 years after the original. Society is still rebuilding, but some places just can't recover. There's a black market, and Jake starts the movie by making a living selling stolen Jaeger parts. I felt like that would have been an interesting area to explore, but it's all but forgotten by the second act. Scott Eastwood is Jake's friend and wingman, but he too isn't too well defined. But he likes puppies, so that's 10 points. There's a love triangle-ish that comes out of nowhere and mostly played as a joke with no real punchline. But the Kid Cadets also took away some of the weight the original had. I kept getting an Ender's Game, Max Steel, Disney Channel vibe. There was Amara, played by Kaylee Spaney, who lost her family to a kaiju attack. She didn't have Idris Elba adopt her, so instead she builds a baby Jaeger named Scrapper out of spare parts. It was actually kind of a cute Jaeger, who actually goes toe-to-toe with a full-size Jaeger. It was a kind of a cool scene. Her backstory kind of mirrors Mako's a little bit, and I just feel like Mako would have been a better mentor for her rather than Jake. But once that happens, I totally lost track of her character. Her plotline runs parallel to Jake's for most of the movie. She's having her own thing and tangles with a bitchy, hard-ass cadet. Because when you have a bunch of kids in a situation like this, of course two of them are going to fight. And of course they get along by the end. Tian Jing is portrayed as a villain in the beginning, a stone-cold CEO bitch who would be at home on OCP's board. They really wanted you to hate this character. She's behind a drone program to replace Jaeger pilots who have to sit in the robot with people who drive them from far away. Dicker Dibs! I felt like they were trying to make it feel like the Jaeger pilots were going to be redundant, and I don't know if they meant these things to be autonomous or piloted remotely or both, but remotely piloted or not, they still need a driver. I mean, they're not going to lose their jobs. These guys would be perfect to train them. The kaiju are still mostly big animals, and they behave as such. But with Charlie Day acting as sort of a commander, at least we get a peek at the intelligence behind the attacks. And that did make the enemy a tad more interesting this time around. The effects are pretty good. The Jaegers are a bit more badass, the kaiju are more menacing and creative this time. And they do this merging thing. 3 kaiju are kind of stitched together into this mega kaiju. It was a bit hard to swallow, but the final creature was fucking cool. I do miss the cinematography of the first one. Guillermo del Toro really had a reverence for this world. Shots were held much longer so you could soak it up. You could follow the action. The Jaegers and kaiju had a better sense of scale and weight. I only really cared about Jake and Gypsy. The other pilots and their machines were interchangeable. And I mostly lost track of who was in what Jaeger aside from Amara. The new pilots are mostly forgettable. There's conflict, acceptance, drama, unity, the usual young adult themes. A junior Jaeger pilot is killed. I had to struggle to remember which one it was. They were that forgettable. In Pacific Rim, you had a few characters, but you were given time to get to know them so you could care and empathize. Uprising is shorter than the first one, and we're given more characters, and even less time to meet them, and all I could think was, oh, which ones are gonna die? Tokyo takes a pounding here. Remember, Godzilla did it before it was cool. I think I've seen so many movies and news clips of buildings being destroyed that shots like this just lost a lot of impact. Uprising is a bigger, louder, but not exactly better 2.5 out of 5. The twists are bigger, the action is bigger, but unfortunately the cliches are also bigger. Most of the characters are less interesting. John Boyega brings a lot, but everyone else is less dimensional. By the way, Scott Eastwood is turning into his dad. If they ever did a Dirty Harry movie where Harry has to time travel back to meet his younger self, Scott should play the young Dirty Harry. Hollywood, are you listening? Make this happen! If you like the first Pacific Rim, you'll probably enjoy this one, but I feel like it's a bit hollow by comparison. Personally, I thought the original felt a bit more epic and grand. Killing off Mako removed the only big emotional center left from Pacific Rim, and that left Uprising a bit heartless. If you like this video, give a thumbs up and subscribe. Or not, no pressure. This is theNewBee, and as always, thanks for watching.